Hi, my name's Tom Blakey. I'm a former paratrooper, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about my military career in the Parachute Regiment and the Pathfinders. I'm also the owner of First in Events, which is an outdoor activities company where we get people to partake in military-themed activities and experiences. So I joined the Army in 1988. I was 16. I joined a thing called Junior Parachute Company, which unfortunately is no longer in existence. It's now Harrogate, which is the junior soldiers for the whole of the army. Prior to that, then, I grew up in a place called Wellingborough in Northamptonshire, and I wanted to be a paratrooper since as long back as I can remember. I was like 7 or so, and I don't really know what influenced me because I've never met a paratrooper before I joined the Parachute Regiment. But I always wanted to be a soldier, and I always wanted to be the best. And in my eyes, and to be honest, the Parachute Regiment is the elite of the British Army. So I wanted to be the best, and also I think I was maybe influenced a little bit by films at the time. So you've got like Bridge Too Far and things like that, and the Eagles landed from the German side, the German paratroopers, which were, legendary in the Second World War. And also when I was growing up, so by the time I was 10, you had the Falklands War, and the Parachute Regiment just performed amazingly during that conflict. And following that conflict, it kind of cemented in my head there was only 2 places to go, really, to join the military, and that was either the Marines or the Parachute Regiment. I've never been into swimming, and I always wanted to jump out of an aeroplane, and I wanted to join the army, so that kind of left one option, Parachute Regiment. So I started training when I was really young. I was 14. I used to run to school and back. It was about 2 miles each way. I actually bought myself a Bergen. I saved up my pocket money. By the time I was 15, I was running there and back with a loaded Bergen as well. And then by the time I was 15, I was also running another 4 miles in the evening. So I was doing about 8 miles a day with a Bergen on. So by the time I joined Junior Para, my fitness was pretty good. My endurance was very good, actually. So when we actually started tabbing, which is when you're doing your loaded speed marches, which is the bread and butter of the Parachute Regiment, I actually was doing pretty good. So I went through 6 months of training with a Junior Para, which was very tough, super strict, very disciplined, but also incredibly, very professional. All the instructors, well, most of them were Falklands veterans, 6 years after the Falklands, so it was very fresh in their minds. Couldn't have asked for a better training team. So we did 6 months of that, loads of fitness, loads of field craft, loads of exercises, and then went to Depot Para, as it was then, so adult training. Went in at week 10. P Company was a week 13, so we was only just before P Company. Now, P Company is the selection week for the Parachute Regiment and Airborne Forces. So you do physical tests, bang, 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 one after the other, 10 miler in 1 hour 45, carrying 35 pound plus a weapon and water, and you're doing a stretcher race, you go over Pen y Fan, all carrying a rucksack, you do a log race, you do milling, which is literally punching the crap out of each other for a minute. You're not allowed to defend your face. You literally got to punch the other guy in the head for a full minute, full on, no sort of dancing around or boxing. So that was quite shocking for a young 17-year-old. You got to do a thing called a trainasium, which is where you go up onto a high beams and stuff, and you have to run around it. It goes up to about 55 feet. So a confidence course, and that's meant to test your nerve at height before you go parachuting. So first time I did P Company, I actually failed it. I got injured on the course, and it happens to a lot of people, more, often than not. At 17, that's quite a savage blow because that was all I wanted to do in my life since I was a young boy. But I picked myself up, got back on with it, did the next P Company 4 weeks later, and passed it, flew through it, no dramas. Went on to my parachute course. First jump was out of a balloon. So we used to jump out of a barrage balloon from 800 feet. And when you jump out of the balloon, it's a lot scarier than a plane because the thing is static, it's not moving, totally silent, totally quiet, and you don't get pushed out like you might think. The instructor just literally taps you on the shoulder and says, go, and you have to make that step, that leap of faith. So you step out the balloon cage, you drop a good couple hundred feet, your stomach rises up into your mouth, you get that feeling as though you're jumping off a high diving board, but it just keeps going faster and faster and faster for a couple hundred feet. So it's pretty scary. However, when the parachute opens, it's just amazing. Just loved it. So did the parachute course. It's 8 jumps, and sod's law, I actually broke my leg on my 7th jump. So 17 years old still, broke my leg. It was only a minor break, but it was enough to back squad me again. And then just, yeah, 6 months later, I went back into the parachute course, completed it again, did the whole thing all over again, and passed out of training. I'd literally just turned 18. It was about a month after my 18th birthday, and I went to One Para. So One Para was my first operational unit. Back then, it wasn't SFSG as it now is. One Para was one of the 3 battalions that would, either be in role as an airborne unit or maybe be in Northern Ireland or something like that. So I went to One Para. I was there for 5.5 years. Had a great time. Went on lots of overseas exercises. So I went to America when I was 18. I'd only been in a battalion a couple of months. Had a fantastic time jumping out of jets. Got American wings. Got to use all the American weapons. First time I've been to somewhere like America, so I'd never been bowling before in my life. They had a bowling alley on camp. They've got swimming pools on camp. They've got all the big PX shops, and we went shopping for all the poncho liner things that we all wanted to get, and swapped T-shirts with the Americans. Had a great time. Went to Corsica, flew from the UK, jumped into Corsica where the 2 Rep French Royal Legion were. Went on exercise against French Royal Legion. Very, very tough exercise. We basically landed in Corsica and tabbed straight up into the mountains. Did 30 miles the first night, carrying all our gear for a few days. And then at the end of that 30 miles, straight into a company attack against 2 Rep. So quite challenging. Again, at the end of that exercise, we gained our French wings. So for foreign wings, then what you do is if you jump out of another force's aircraft wearing their parachute, you get awarded their wings. And it's not just a case of you just wear it if you feel like it. You get presented them on a parade. So again, nice little reminder, memento of that exercise. We also jumped into Sardinia on a UK-based exercise. Well, it was an international exercise, but we was the UK force for it. Flew from the UK, the whole battalion, jumped into Sardinia. And if anyone remembers this, 1994, it's called Dynamic Impact. And we all basically, a lot of us got injured. Really high winds on the drop zone, rocks everywhere, and there were people breaking their legs and stuff all over the place. So that was the start of the exercise, and then we went on for 2 weeks in the field straight after that. So yeah, lots of good stuff in One Para, lots of challenging things. Operationally, I went to Northern Ireland for 2.5 years, from 1991 to 1993, on a residential tour of Belfast, which had its ups and downs. I found it kind of boring because we were stagging on. We was on guard a lot of the time, either that or just providing a target for the IRA to shoot out or blow up. Not really what I joined the parachute regiment for, but it's part of the job back then. I then went back for another 6-month tour a year later and decided I need to kind of do something different because I was getting a bit bored of throwing big expanses of my life away at one time in Northern Ireland, waiting to get killed. And I just felt like challenging myself a bit more. So I then volunteered for the Pathfinder Platoon, which was or is the reconnaissance unit for the Airborne Brigade. Back then it was 5 Airborne Brigade, now it's 16 or Assault Brigade. And the Pathfinders are basically the forward reconnaissance unit for the brigade, made up of very, very professional soldiers. Back when it was started, when it was initiated, it was all parachute regiment in 1985. Then it was opened up to other cat badges within the brigade, such as engineers, signals, REME and stuff. And then a few years later, it was opened up to the rest of the army, and now it's tri-service. So very much like SAS selection, you can attend from, say, the RAF regiment or the Marines. There have been Marines in the Pathfinders as well. So it's a 7-week course in Sennybridge in Wales, and basically it's based on SAS selection, but a very compressed, shortened version of SAS selection. So you get absolutely thrashed for the first week. You do 10 milers, 8 milers, stuff like that. Lots of very hard runs and things like that. And what they're trying to do is sort the chaff, from the wheat, before they get onto the main meat of the course. You then do a hills phase where you go out in groups, small groups, navigating around the hills at minimum of 4 Ks an hour. And the DS is DS led, so they're assessing whether you're fit enough and whether your navigation skills are good enough. Then you do 4 test tabs. So unlike selection where you do 7, there's 4 for the Pathfinders, but those 4 are exactly the same. They're identical to the ones on selection. So you're carrying progressive weight over those 4 days. And the last one you do is endurance, which is incredibly hard. It's 64 kilometres over all the high points of the Brecon Beacons. Obviously, your body's pretty trashed by this stage after doing a couple of weeks of phys. Self-navigating night and day on your own, using just a map and compass, no GPSs, no, smartwatches or anything like that. So a very, very tough initial selection. Once you've finished the hills phase there, it doesn't stop then. You then go on to a tactics phase where you're learning your small unit tactics. So you're things like patrolling as a small team, recce's like CTRs, observation post skills, obstacle crossing, contact drills, all that sort of thing. You then do a small exercise where you do an OP over a couple of days, an observation post. And for anyone that sat still in a wood block in October, November, in that weather in Stony Bridge, they'll tell you it's not particularly nice. It's going to be cold. It's going to be wet. And then you've got to concentrate and be disciplined to watch a target. So that's your job within Pathfinders, is observing targets and reconnaissance. And some of the guys that were very capable physically on the hills, that were very good at navigating, very fit, a couple of those guys decided it wasn't for them. Once they got into the OP phase, they was just like, screw this. This is horrendous. So it's a different kind of test. So that, it's not the sort of thing, it might sound easy when you're listening to it, but it's difficult when you're doing it. All on hard routine, so no cooking, no hot food, no hot water, brews and stuff like that. The reason being is you don't want to give your position away to the enemy because you're working in close proximity to them. Once you've finished that, then you go into a live firing phase where you're doing contact drills live, you're doing instinctive shooting, you're firing different types of weapons. We got to fire a claymore on my Carter as well. That was pretty cool. And then final exercise. So you do a 2-week final exercise where you do a long insertion, carrying an awful lot of weight on your back. So you're carrying all your food, all your water, OP kit, patrol kit, radios, batteries, med kit, blah, blah, blah. So that completes the whole of the PF course. And like I say, it's like a compressed version of selection. And the DS are on your case all day, every day. They're basically on your shoulder, watching every single move you make. So any little mess ups you make, any bad skills, it's highlighted. So it's very detailed and very intense, the actual instruction on that and the selection for it. The result is, though, that there's some amazingly good soldiers actually produced as a result of that course. And remember that as well, that you couldn't turn up for the Pathfinders if you've done 2 months in battalion or whatever unit you're from. These are good guys, the cream of the crop from their units, but before they've even turned up. And then, you get through that course, and even if you finish it, you might not necessarily have passed because you're being assessed all the way and all your drills and skills. So a very tough course, and it provides, the basis for some very, very good soldiers at the end of that. So I went to Pathfinders in 1995. My initial session there was 4 years, and I loved it. Basically, I was in and amongst people like me that were keen, that were motivated, they wanted to be there. Even in some battalions, you get the occasional person that's just, he's managed to slip through the net and, he's not really that interested, he's just doing it because it's a job and might be only in for 3 years. Guys in the Pathfinders are really self-motivated guys, and they've had to be like that to get through the course. So I really enjoyed that working environment where people wanted to be there and they did everything. They gave 100% and more to everything they did. Got to do some really interesting stuff there. Over my time there, courses I did, we used to do a medical cadre every year. So that was a 3-week in-house cadre where we'd learn far more medical skills than what you did as a patrol medic in a battalion. So you'd be, putting drips in each other. You'd be learning about doing chest seals, incubating. You'd be go to autopsies to see bodies chopped up and internal organs pulled out, brains popped out of heads, all that sort of stuff. That have surgeons in teaching you all sorts of great stuff, like all sorts of mega skills. I attended the jungle warfare instructor course in Brunei. It's a 10-week course in Brunei where you learn to operate in the jungle and instruct others how to operate and fight in the jungle. That was a great opportunity. I did the Halo course, actually known as the HAPC course in the military, high altitude parachute course, where you're not, so I've done my basic parachute course where you jump out 800 feet with a static line canopy. This is military freefall. So jumping out of an aircraft at night, 25,000 feet, wearing oxygen, and an enormous rucksack because you've got to carry all your gear for however long you're on the ground for. So that was a great opportunity. We also did Hey Ho, which is getting out of the plane at the same height at night with all the gear, but on a static line. So as you leave the aircraft, the parachute opens straight away. And what you can do is you can glide towards the target. So the plane doesn't have to fly anywhere near a target. You basically get out, turn left or right, depending on which way the plane's flying, follow a GPS and a compass, and just glide for anything up to, say, 30 miles or so under canopy. And the only other thing you see around you is the other canopies, because quite often and not, you're above clouds and stuff. So just amazing some of those opportunities. I also did the forward air controller course, so known as JTACs now in the military, where you have the responsibility, really big responsibility, to talk to aircraft and guide them onto targets, and you give them permission to drop weapons onto targets, you know, on operations, whether that be a strafing run, you know, with guns, or whether it's dropping bombs, foreign rockets. One of the great things about that is you get a backseat ride in a fast jet. So they used Hawks on our course, which is the same type of planes that you'll see the Red Arrows using, and we get a backseat ride in it to get the perspective of the pilot as he's flying in to attack targets, and over the net that you hear the other FACs, JTACs, talking to the pilot, giving him the instructions and permissions to drop weapons. So fantastic opportunity. It was doing things called pop attacks, where you pop up, go upside down, and then come back the right way to dive down into a target, which is what you might have seen on the last Top Gun 2 film. That's called a pop attack. So we was doing that for real, pulling like up to 7 Gs. Amazing opportunities. So yeah, had a great time there. I also was in the Red Devils for 3 years. So I decided to go there for a couple of years because I was getting really into my skydiving. Had a fantastic time there, jumping into air shows and events all around the UK and overseas as well. So we used to jump into big air shows in the States, places like Florida, North Carolina, California, places like that. We was doing up to about 300 jumps a year. I was on the canopy formation team, where you literally crash canopies into each other to make the stack, and then convert the stack into a formation, into various other things. Quite scary when you first start doing that sort of thing, intentionally crashing canopies into each other. Sort of thing that you don't normally do when you're doing any other kind of parachuting, but for display parachuting, it makes for a great show. And I had some quite scary moments, but it was interesting as well. Really, really was. Absolutely loved the job. Operationally then, I deployed to Northern Ireland twice, Kosovo, which was a peacekeeping operation with the Pathfinders, Macedonia, again, to prevent the situation there from deteriorating into what happened in Kosovo, so disarming rebels and fighting groups and observing what was going on and reporting that back. And when we was in Macedonia, actually, we was there whilst the Twin Towers happened, the terrorist incident. So it's one of those things that you always remember where you are, isn't it, in an incident like that. So we was over there with G Squadron from Hereford. We was working alongside those guys, and we come back in from an operation. It just happened. We saw what was going on the TV, in the TV room, and we knew that stuff was going to happen pretty savage after that, and it did. And yeah, following that, more operations into Iraq. So we spearheaded the invasion of Iraq, which was pretty amazing. It was kind of like the real classic operations that Pathfinders are used for, where you're pushing out hundreds of kilometres in front of your own troops, gathering information, carrying out strike operations, bringing in fast jets, using FACs, dropping weapons on important targets, that sort of thing. And then Afghanistan. So 2 tours of Afghanistan, one in 2006 and one in 2010, both with the Pathfinders. Very hectic, kinetic tours. Sort of one of those things where it's the best thing you've ever done, plus kind of worst things you've ever done, all mixed into one big ball. But yeah, getting to see and getting to take part in things that you would only read in books, really, up until you take part in these operations. You know, like airstrikes by A-10s, 200 metres from where we were stood, taking out targets and stuff. Massive firefights using a 50 cal on the back of the vehicles at night. You know, all sorts of those things that you want to do as a soldier, you know, from day one. It was amazing to get those opportunities, really. But yeah, life in the Pathfinders especially, I absolutely loved. Just great to be in and amongst that workspace where people want to be there, people are motivated, and having the opportunity to do things that you've always wanted to do, whether that being on exercise, on courses, or operations. So that was 25 years I did in the regular army. I left the army after 25 years because I basically finished my career. I did my 22 years, standard. Plus I did 18 months at the start as a junior soldier, which didn't even count towards your service because I wasn't 18. And then I got a 2-year extension at the end. So I finished my 25 years. I then went into the reserves. So I joined the reserve battalion, 4 para, for a few years. Enjoyed it there too. It was really good to keep that sort of that military side going. And a lot of the time I was there, I was kind of training and hoping to inspire, hopefully, some of the younger soldiers that were joining straight from civilian street into doing this sort of thing. Again, going on exercises, I got a good couple of opportunities whilst I was 4 para 2. Went back over to the States on a rigging course where you rig up loads, aerial dispatch them, like push them out the back of C-130s, supply drops and stuff like that. Also some parachuting out of Chinooks and Black Hawks too. And then later on, I actually got the opportunity to go back to the Red Devils as a reservist, full-time reserve service, back on the Red Devils. So that was awesome up until the point where I broke my leg quite badly and I had to kind of end my contract there. But so there's a bit of a theme going on. I've broken both my legs parachuting, once at the start and once at the end of my career. But once I did recover from that second broken leg, which was a femur, quite a bad one, I then got back into jumping again. So I am skydiving again, and I'm now in a civilian parachute display team called the Jump Dogs. I've left the army now, but I am still very heavily connected with the military. I work as a school staff instructor at a school, a CCF, Combined Cadet Force, and which is pretty much like a company sergeant major stroke admin bod, sort of colourman job, where I organise the training and do all the admin for the CCF unit, and hopefully I'm inspiring some of those young people to actually take up a career in the military forces. So yeah, still doing it after, 36 years. So still in uniform, even though I've got a beard now because I'm a stinking civvy, and still actually hopefully still inspiring people and getting people trained up and stuff. And on top of that, I've got the First in Events company, which is something I'm doing in my own time now, where it's military-based experiences and challenges, things like bushcraft and survival, the fan dance, tandem skydives, navigation weekends. So, passing on experience and knowledge to people to help train them up for their lives, basically, and just getting people some nice experiences and, again, hoping to inspire people. So that's pretty much my story. Hopefully it hasn't been too boring. I haven't put too many people to sleep. And, check out the website, firstinevents.com. And, hopefully see you on an event soon.